Good morning, everyone. We are going to be discussing the end of year process today and what needs to take place in Alabama. I do want to state that this video is used for training purposes only, that no real students or data are portrayed in this video, and any likeness to any real student is purely coincidental because we do not want to violate FERPA and share any student data that should not be shared. So all fake data inside of my training server. All right, end of year process. So on Monday, a memo went out to all superintendents, and I shared it today with data managers and tech directors after it became embargo, out of the embargo. And you can now see inside of that memo all of those dates that we've been talking about quite a bit and has been in the newsletter each week. So we know that the end of year for the state really wraps up on June 16th, which is when we take the final snapshot up here at the state of this school year. So you want to make sure your data is accurate as possible. One of the processes that has to take place before we can do our snapshot is that end of year process inside of PowerSchool, because that is actually what moves the kids to the next school and the next grade level. So without doing the end of year process, we wouldn't have promotions, retentions, or graduation. So that's the process that does that. Last week, we had a webinar on how to actually perform how to mark the students for retention, promotion, and for graduation. So if you did not participate in that webinar, I've linked the video here as well, because the steps in the end of year process are part of this. So you want to make sure that you have that marked as well. So you will see, and it's always like this, the third Friday in June is the date that we collect our state snapshot. And so the end of year process always will be run the Tuesday to Tuesday right before that third Friday in June. So this year, that week-long range falls Tuesday, June 6th to Tuesday, June 13th. So all districts have this 1 week time span to press the button that runs the process. Now, all of the stuff that has to happen prior to can be done now. So you can start, in fact, you can kind of work on it throughout the entire year, keeping your data clean and knowing what to look for to get ready for this end of year process. But everybody has to run it within that week. Once everyone has ran, and we have reports up here at the state that we will watch and see, that's when I'll then, after that, give the green light for everybody to start doing their summer withdrawals and summer enrollments for students that are already somewhere else in the state, because we know right now you can't pre-register anybody for the upcoming year if they're already in a district in the state somewhere. So that green flag will go after that. So what we want to talk about today is everything that you need to do to prepare yourself to get ready to press that button the week of June 6th through June 13th. So I want to reference this document right here. This is an Alabama specific end of year document. Now, guys, I will say this: if you go out there in support and you Google in all of the world of everybody who uses PowerSchool, or you look on PowerSchool's documentation, you're going to see a generic end of year process guide. We have a specific one for Alabama because there are some steps that we have to take in Alabama, being a statewide instance, that's not documented in that generic one. So you want to make sure that you have my link for the very specific Alabama end of year process. Okay. So in this end of year process document, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that memo. Let's go through this. And it very much details everything that you need to do to prepare for it, reports you need to run, because when you run the end of year process, some tables are wiped. And if you want to keep those tables, you need to make sure you download the data from them ahead of time. It does update everyone's grade level in school. And so once you run this end of year process, all your 8th graders become 9th graders. And if you come in 2 weeks later and go, I want to run this 9th grader's 8th grade report card, well, when you go run it, it's going to give you the 8th grade classes, but it's still going to say they're a 9th grade kid, because the student record is always live. There's not a historical view of that student record in the SIS. We all saw that last year. So there are going to be some things that you're going to want to run in bulk and download and save somewhere so that you have them in that moment in time snapshot for your kids. And this walks through all of that. So you have these steps of preparing, and then you have the steps of actually performing the end of year process. Now, keep in mind, we've all gone through this once. Like last year, we all went through the end of year process, and it really was not all that bad. All districts were able to handle it within that 1 week. And as far as how long it actually takes to perform the end of year process, some districts it took all of 5 minutes for it to run. Some districts it took an hour. Well, there were a few, some of the larger districts might take up to 4 or so, but it was really a smooth process. And so I anticipate that same thing happening again. This document also will walk you through what you can do after the end of year process so that you can start working in next year. And I'll say that I know just in conversations with a lot of the districts, many of you have already started on this information right here. So all good things. So we're going to go through this document and just kind of make sure that we understand what is going on. So like we said, what the end of year process does is it takes the students in their current state at their school and it moves them to the next grade level and the next school that you have designated for them. So if I look up Mr. Mickey Mouse over here in my server, he is a 12th grader currently. All students' designations are found under scheduling, scheduling setup. One of the steps that's in this document is what we talked about last week is that each student has to have a next year grade and a next year school indicated. And when this end of year process is run, it goes and looks at every student's next year grade and every student's next year school, and it moves them to that grade level and to that school. Every student has to have this set, even if it's a student that you know is going to be a summer withdrawal. You still have to process them through, and then after everybody runs end of year is when you can withdraw them out. Don't withdraw them out ahead of time because you're withdrawing them out of this school year and they need to show on your state report. So we always have to wait on those withdrawals until after that snapshot is taken, and this year it's that June 16th date that it's taken. So the first part of this is going to talk about what else happens in addition to just transferring schools and transferring them into their next grade level. So right here, it lists that there are 6 tables that are actually cleared. Now, I will be very honest. Many of these tables don't mean anything to any of us in Alabama, but I still want you to be aware of them just in case you need to. So first is batches, which is power lunch. I do not know any district in the state of Alabama that actually uses power lunch. Most of us have some type of point of sale system that our CMP department uses, be it Titan, Mosaic, Heartland, PCS, like there's a whole slew of them. So this batches, this login, not logins, excuse me, GL detail, those are all dealing with power lunch, which is not something that we deal with in Alabama. You just need to know they are wiped, but I don't think any of you need to worry with trying to pull down any data because there's nothing there to have to worry with. Your bulletin items. If you wanted to download, so all of those bulletin items that you might use PowerSchool for, so how many of you actually go in and create little announcement notes in your daily bulletin? It keeps a log of them throughout the entire year. In the end of year process, that log is wiped out. So if you wanted to, just for some type of documentation purposes, wanted to download all of those logs so that you just have a record of what type of daily bulletins you created, you can download, and this would need to be your district PowerSchool administrator doing this. You would need to download the bulletin items table. They can export that out prior to running to the end of year process and just archive that somewhere. So completely up to you. The DB log tracks various changes made in DDA. So for my PowerSchool admins on here that actually have DDA access, there is a log that tracks what you do when you are running DDA. That log is wiped in the end of year process. So again, if you want to have where you download that so you have record of what changes were made by who and when, then you would want to download the DB log, export that out of DDE so that you just have it as a record, because once end of year process runs, it will be gone. Again, power lunch, no need to do anything there. Logins. So you know how you can look in PowerSchool and there are certain reports where you can run to see who logged in, when, and where? That table is wiped at end of year. So if you want to have detail of what of your users have logged into PowerSchool, a lot of us use that PSCB report that shows logins. What that report runs from is from this table that will be wiped at end of year. So if you want record of those logins that people have made throughout the district, then you'll want to download that table. And then the last table is called phone log. It's actually an odd name for a table, but it shows your parents, students and parents access. So anybody who's logging into the public portal, that's where all of those logs are taken. So it's wiped at end of year. And if you want to keep a record of your parents and students and how often they logged into PowerSchool this year, that would be what you would want to download. Again, those are completely optional for districts, but we do want to draw your attention to the fact that they do get wiped out at the end of every year. Another thing to note, if you import lunch balances in, those lunch balances are transferred over from one year to the next. And when it comes to fees, if any of you actually run your fees through PowerSchool, you actually have an option at the end of the year where you can roll those fee balances over. And y'all, many of you did that last year, and you saw that SOY balance. It kind of takes all of them and smushes them together and become a start of year balance. Or you actually can wipe them all out. Not many districts do that, but if you did, you could start everybody from zero and wipe them all out on the end of your process. So I would just say be careful which one you choose and make sure you choose the accurate one, and we'll show that in the page when we get there. So those were the things I wanted to let you know about the tables. Now let's talk about this checklist. I highly recommend that you do the old school, print this one page out and get you a pen, and as you go through and do these, you kind of check them off. So let's talk about where you find all of these things and what you need to do inside of PowerSchool to get ready for the end of year. First off, it starts off in the PowerSchool list is just to back up PowerSchool. Now, this is not something that we have to do because we are a hosted system in the state. However, one of the things that districts can do, and I do recommend it to tech directors, is you can put in a support ticket to PowerSchool to just get a copy of your backup so that you can store it somewhere just to have it for any kind of records keeping purposes. So you can request that backup from PowerSchool support. Wouldn't be anything you needed. Some districts I know spin up their own like test server, and they'll put a backup in there so that they can use it. Completely up to you and what you want to do as districts. Validate school and section enrollments. So let's talk about school and section enrollments inside of here. One thing that is highly recommended that districts run, I say once a month, is found under, and it doesn't matter if you're at district office or if you're at a school, but under system, system reports, not system, and you scroll down to the membership and enrollment area. There are two audit reports called School Enrollment Audit and Section Enrollment Audit. And it is highly suggested that these things are checked and cleaned often because these will tell you if you have issues with a student's enrollment dates being wacky with your beginning and end of year according to your years and terms, and your section enrollment data where it will tell you if you have issues with sections. A lot of times we see kids that are enrolled into classes and those class enrollments don't align with their school enrollments. And so you want these to be clean so that when we do that state snapshot, you have record of the actual enrollment dates as they should be. So let's take a look at these two reports. Let's first go to the school enrollment audit. So you're going to see different areas of these right here. So this is going to tell me first a list of any students with enrollment date overlaps or misalignments. So what it's doing is it's taking the kid and it's looking at when their entry and exit dates are compared to what the years and terms and your start dates for your school are. A lot of times we see errors in this when you have summer withdrawals that were not processed correctly, because remember, in a summer withdrawal, you have to go change an entry date and an exit date, not just the exit date. So let's click into one of these kids and see if we can figure out what's going on. So I'm going to take Joy right here. Now in this one, I can see that this is not a current kid, this is transferred out and it's data way back from 2020. This was even before PowerSchool. And so you might be going, well, Stacey, why is this even showing up on this report? Because we're looking for this year. Well, this report actually checks against all school years. And a lot of districts right now have data from old years that got migrated in incorrectly in the re-enrollments table. We know that that's a known issue in the state. And eventually people want it where we are going to be able to run this report and not have old years of data inside of them. The ones that we have to make sure we clean up are the ones for this year. So if you are a district that has a lot of students, so like you see, I've got a whole good handful of from this one school, from this school, from this school. It's one of those things that hopefully over the last couple of years, you just knock them out a little at a time, getting those old past years cleaned up. So let's go back to Joy and talk about what's an appropriate way to clean up these past years of data. Well, it depends on where the data is and how you're going to correct it. In this case, and every case is kind of different, do you notice that really what happened in the migration is this 1 year got duplicated? So I've got this 812 to 826, and it's the exact same thing here. In cases like this, you just need to go into one and delete it out. And I get this question a lot. Stacey, is there a way to just delete all those duplicates at one time? Well, each kid's kind of different, so really there's not a way to go grab them all because there's not a unique identifier against all kids. And that's why I say this report really has to be cleaned up a little at a time. In this case, I'm just going to go in here to Joy's and I'm going to delete this enrollment. Like, it's an error in this list. It should just show from this, and that will take her off of the list when I run it next time. Each kid is probably something different. If I go grab another kid, nope, same thing, another repeat in it. So you'll have to look and see. What we see another set of inside of this report is that you'll have enrollment entry and exit dates that might overlap. So let's pretend that this said 8/12/2020 to 10/2/2020, and then you had another one that said 10/1/2020 to the end of the school year in 21. If you have overlaps in these beginning entry and exit dates, you would have to figure out which one is the correct one. So let's say that this one was the correct one. And if this one had said, 10/1 and it should have said 10/2, then you could click into here and you'd be able to change it on this page. So anything in this top area under the current enrollment page, you can modify directly on this page. However, if the information falls down here in the previous enrollments area, those, especially from past years, you can't correct because we didn't have FTEs set up for this year. I have a lot of people who say, well, Stacey, can we just set up FTEs for that year and then put it in? I don't suggest that because that can mess with end of year data sometimes, and you can incorrectly associate a current FTE with a past year, and it'll end up trying to count this kid who's no longer with you as a student this year, so you don't want to do that. Your best thing to do is to go and change this on the re-enrollments table, which means district administrators, this is going to fall on you because you have DDA access. The data up here under current enrollments is housed on the students table. The data down here under previous enrollments is housed in the re-enrollments table. So I'm going to pop open another link and show you how to access this and how you would clean it if you need to. So I'm going to go down here to System, and I'm going to come down here to DDE. I'm going to change students to re-enrollments, and this is where not everybody on this call has access. It depends on, R comes before S, Stacey. Re-enrollments, there we go. Notice I have 50,000 records, so if I pull all those records there, I don't want to have to search for them. I want this one kid. So there's an ID number on this student that it sorts everything by, and this ID number is hidden on a page inside of here. If you scroll to this student's teacher comments page right here, there's a number right down here at the bottom. And even if you had a kid who had like reporting terms and grades and stuff, still at the bottom of it, you're going to see this number. It's a hidden student ID inside of there. So 3234. This is the number that I need to search for to get her transfer information to show in re-enrollments. So I'm going to come down here in this filter, and I'm going to say filter for student ID is 3234, and I'm going to search those records. And notice it comes up with 5 records. And you'll notice in my re-enrollments table, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 records. It's those 5 records right there. And so if you're the database administrator, you would go into these 5 records. You would need to flip this to DDA. So for those of you who have the access, you know how to make that change. And then you could go in here and click in. So if you knew that this was the date that needed to be changed, like if remember how we talked about that 8/20 date? Let's pretend that needed to be 8-1 or 8-2, whatever it is, you could click into it and you could update that entry date from here. So if you have errors in that school enrollment report that's from past years, here's how you're going to have to clean them. You'll clean those in the re-enrollments table. And eventually, guys, we will get that bad migrated data from iNow cleaned up so that when you run this, it truly will be only errors on the individual report for this year to prep you for the end of year process. Somebody just asked, does it matter if you delete current versus previous enrollment duplication? Yes, Geneva. You want to delete, if you've got a duplication in these two, don't delete out the current, because that's the current enrollment is really the last active enrollment and where it was at. So you want to leave that data there. If you have choice, you always want to pull it out of that previous enrollment and get it out of there. Okay. So I want to go back now to that report. So remember how we got to that report. We went to system reports and we went down. Oops, too far. To my membership and enrollment area, and it was the school enrollment audit report. So these are all students that we've just got to look at those dates in that transfer info screen and see what might be going on with them. Now, if I scroll on past this, because these are just going to go, because I'm running this at district office, so this is looking at every one of my schools. You can also run this at the school level and just see that one school. So registrars, counselors who help with enrollments can also look at this if needed to. So that tells me all of my issues right there. That's one report. The second report that you would want to see is the section audit report that's right up underneath. So it's this section enrollment audit down here. So if I click into this report, this is going to tell me multiple things. The first thing it's going to tell me is a list of students who are enrolled in this school, but you do not have in any classes. And that can be a big red flag, because this is a way how you might find that you should have no-showed a kid at the beginning of school and you've had an active kid riding this whole time, but was never put in a class, so nobody ever told you they were never attending or marked absent for you to know that you should have been no-showed at any point in time. So for these students, you need to find out what's going on. Why do you have a student enrolled and they're not in any active classes? Now, a lot of times people will see these and they'll be pre-K students and they're like, well, Stacy, what am I supposed to do with these pre-K students? Well, if they're just your generic pre-K students because you've got a first class or a local pre-K class, there is a pre-K course code they should be in. If it's a services student, we have services classes that they're supposed to be enrolled in. So if you have some in there and you can't figure out why they're in there, contact me, let me know. Let's figure out what's going on with the kid and why, because everybody should have a schedule. That is actually an error over an AIM that has to be cleaned for that. Now, this is my sample site, so I've got a lot of kids who are not enrolled in classes. I'm going to scroll past all of them because I want to get to the bottom to show you the other type of error that you have in here. See, lots of them. All right, here's the second type of error you get on this page. Students with course date misalignments and school enrollment. So let me tell you what happens with these. You know how you have a lot of kids that come to you brand new on the first day of school and it's crazy in the counselor's office? And so they're like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and roll you in and I'll put your schedule in tomorrow. Like, here's your paper schedule, go ahead. And so then tomorrow rolls around and they go put the schedule in. And when they put the schedule in, they forget to change the date that they put them in the classes. And so it ends up putting that date. So now there's a mismatch. You're saying, hey, I enrolled in school on 8/9, but I didn't get put into classes into 8/10. That can't happen. Those enrollments need to stay true to the overall school enrollment, or it messes up your ADA and it messes up your end of year calculations. So what you have to do is look at the student and read the first line. So I have Aaron right here, or Isaac Aaron. In Isaac, this top line tells me his grade and tells me when I have him enrolled into the school. So these are the dates that are on Aaron's transfer info screen. He was enrolled on 8/10 and he withdrew on 3/14. Okay, no problem. So he's a withdrawn kid. And I know you're going, well, why do I even worry about those withdrawn kids? Well, remember, every kid is counting in that 9-month enrollment for the state snapshot. So even if they're withdrawn, you still have to make sure that their data is correct for when they were with you. So on the transfer info screen, it says Isaac was enrolled on 8/10. The error is coming in from the physical science class. On the all enrollment screen for scheduling, it's saying that he was enrolled in physical science on 8/9. Now, how can that be? How can he start taking the class before he was ever enrolled into the school? And so again, this is where you have to go, which one is right? So who is in charge of enrollments at this high school? Did he actually enroll on the 9th or did he enroll on the 10th? So somebody's got to answer that question. That will tell you which one of these dates need to be changed. Was it that, oh, I just put the wrong date in, he actually did show up and start on the 9th? Then you would need to go change the transfer info screen to say 8/9. But if the answer is no, he did start on 8/10, then I'm going to have to go to his record. So let's pull him up in another link. And just to show you, here's the transfer info page. See how it says he started school on 8/10? But then when I come up here to the scheduling, the all enrollments under the enrollment area, and I look at that physical science class, notice I got a lot of red and black. We did a lot of drops and adds on him apparently, but I need to go find that physical science class, because in that physical science class, see right here, when does it say he started? 8/9, and that's not right. So what I would have to do is I would need to edit, and I would need to update to this, say no, he didn't start until 8/10, and submit it. And now that will take him off of this list. So same thing for all these down here. If I look at JJ Allen, he was enrolled on 5/8/2023. Okay, so he just started with us last week. But when he was enrolled in classes, he was started as of 1/4 and 1/5. So we got some issues there. So those are going to be where your majority of your errors are going to be and how you would need to go about cleaning those up. Okay. A couple of questions that came in to chat. Is there an issue with AIM portal updating? I've corrected some enrollment overlaps, but errors are still showing in AIM. Linda, it depends on in what year you corrected them. If it's in past years, then those don't really show up, especially in cohort, until the cohort portal is actually open, and it's closed right now. So you won't see some of those updates until later, and some of it won't show up until they process all that historical data. So if we did EA, can we change previous years from other systems? Yes, Geneva, because you want to get that correct in your system as far as those dates. Patrick, I have errors, but my dates are correct. So it's still going to be something with the dates, Patrick. We would just need to dig in and to see which one. And guys, you can also submit PowerSchool support tickets with this. So if you need like immediate help, reach out to support, because I know a lot of people will send me emails and I do my best to answer them. But like right now, I'm going to be on webinars for 3 hours, so some are going to be delayed. So don't just think that they have to come to me to assist. You have PowerSchool support that you can put a ticket in with, and they will help assist as well. Kate says, can the old data be left there? Kate, it can, because it's actually not going to affect anything in end of year. However, that means that each year you're going to have to dig through the report to find what errors are actually there for current year. So it's best if eventually you can get all that old data fixed in any error report, so that eventually your report will just be reflective of any errors for this year. Juan asked, what about the 23-24 registering new students? Juan, there's a link that we did on summer school registration, or not summer, but summer registrations and registering for next year. So I highly recommend that you watch that to get all of that information. Phyllis, do we ignore the ones that are enrolled in remote classes that are showing on the report? Yes, so Phyllis, would this be one where it's showing no classes in there? If so, then yes. If you have some of those anomalies with cross LEA and remote LEA, you would know that those need to be adjusted in there, and that some of those can be ignored. Should you have a schedule for private school services only students? Yes, Stephanie, they should be enrolled inside of their services courses. Geneva, will it be possible for PowerSchool to validate the information when it is first entered? There are validations in some of it, Geneva. I just have to see exactly where you're talking about on there. Cody, most of our section enrollment issues are due to them starting on day 1, but their old school won't withdraw them for a date before our first day. They're technically summer withdrawals. What can we do about it? Well, Cody, you just want to get it off of your list because here's the thing, the error's showing for them and it's showing for you. And even when they go in and fix it on their side, it doesn't automatically update over here on this transfer info screen. So your best bet is to go in here and put inside of your records what you know to be the truth in there and align those up. Gary, they're all in the courses app, so you just have to look for those pre-K cheat sheet courses. Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going through the end of your process. I know y'all seem to have some questions about scheduling and stuff. Let's do those offline and not part of this, just so we can keep this one as a end of year true training for the recording. All right, so let's go back to our end of year process. So working on those two sets of validation reports, school enrollments and section enrollments are going to be huge. All right, printing reports. We're going to go down and show you a list of reports that you are going to probably want to print ahead of time so that we can get through there. So let's just go through it this way. And I'll tell you, this right here shows you exactly where to get each one of the items on this checklist. So if you're like, Stacy, remind me where you got to this. Inside of this checklist, it tells you to validate the school enrollments, go to the reports, run reports, and school enrollment audit. And validate section reports, same thing, reports, run reports, and do that section enrollment audit. Next thing it recommends are to print any reports. Again, it says optional, but guys, this is highly, highly recommended. It states in here, while many reports in PowerSchool can return data from prior years, some reports are designated to report on data from the current school year only. So think about historical data, some of your attendance reports. If there are huge reports that you use inside of this system reports, your ADM, your ADA, things like that, because those reports are just reading from that school year. Some of these, if you're a heavy user, I would recommend going and running and just keeping that PDF version somewhere tucked away so that you can always refer back to it. A lot of people run these ADA and ADM reports. All of these on section reports, if you wanted to get attendance profiles, if you wanted to get, even though some of these can be run for past years, you would want to go through and run whatever reports you typically use. Object reports, I'm going to highly recommend that after you give all of their kiddos their report cards and all the kiddos their transcripts for seniors, I would run a batch of them. So after we give our seniors their transcripts, I would grab my 12th graders and I would run them their transcript in a batch and put it in a PDF and find some place to store it so that you can always refer back to it. Because remember, with seniors, you lose class rank after you graduate them. And that's one of the reasons we have that new field put in for seniors so that you can manually enter it to pull back on a transcript if you need to. I recommend running report cards so that you can show that 8th grader as an 8th grader with their final 8th grade report card and not as a 9th grader with an 8th grade report card if you try to print it for after end of year. Tuck those away somewhere so that you can get them. Now, state reports, let's talk about this. If you watch, and y'all probably saw on the newsletter that I put out Monday, there's actually another end of year process that PowerSchool is doing in general, nationwide next week. In every piece of PowerSchool documentation that you hear, they are always going to say that you need to wait and run end of year after you submit state reports. That does not apply to the state of Alabama because we are different in the fact that our state reports are done inside of AIM. All other states, state reportings are actually inside of PowerSchool, ours are not. So we have to process the end of year process before our state report. So I need you to keep that in mind, that AIM is your sole source of that. Global reports. Any reports on that run reports page under system reports, you would want to look at that. I highly recommend looking at this knowledge base article right here. If you have access, I might need to update this to the new community article, but I think it might pass us through. Let's see. Oh, it's taking a while. All right, let's just go back. This article right here lists the reports that tell you exactly what reports will not be able to be pulled in the previous year. So it tells you exactly what ADA and ADM reports. It tells you exactly which discipline reports, exactly which attendance reports. So look at this article and see exactly which reports are in that list so that if you know you use them as a system, that you need to pull those down and have saved before you run the end of year process. Make sure your principals know if there's a report that they pull quite often, because you know what's going to happen. You're going to run end of year, and then we're going to get settled into the summer, and the principal's going to call and go, hey, I really want to look at attendance for last year, or discipline. That's the big one, discipline for last year. And I want to know how many of this, and this I had. When you roll over end of year, the counts inside of incidents. So I'm going to flip here to the high school. When you look at incident management right here as a principal, these are showing incidents for kids who are currently enrolled in your high school. When you roll end of year and it moves the kids, and those 8th graders become 9th graders at this high school and the 12th graders go out, these numbers shift, because it looks at numbers based on the kids who are showing in that enrollment at that time. And so even if you change this back to 21, 22, I'm still going to be looking at incident counts based on the kids I have enrolled right now, not the kids I had enrolled back then. And so any of those reports that are listed inside of here, including those discipline ones, you are going to want to print out. Your principals are going to run and print any of these so that they don't adjust after end of year. One good thing is with the Unified Insights acquisition that we have now, once we get that up and going for next year, a lot of that will be archived in there, so you'll be able to get that kind of data out of there, and we won't have to do as much reporting in the SIS side for next end of year as we're doing right now. Years and terms. In order to roll everybody into next year, there has to be a next year present in every school. So one of the things that you have to make sure you do is go create the years and terms for each one of your schools. There should be a next year. And yes, that includes graduated students, because I get that a lot from people, and School 4999 for your services only kids. So this walks you through the steps of how to create that next year's year and term. If you're working in Power Scheduler right now, you've probably already done this process, but it's your schools that you might not be doing anything with yet. Make sure that you have those set up. Make sure you have the next school indicator for each student. So these are the steps that I talked about last week in the promoting, retention, and graduating of students. This is where you've got to go to that scheduling setup screen, and you've got to make sure that you have the next school year and the next school grade for all of your students. So again, if I just click on a kid and go choose them and come down to the scheduling setup, every kid must have a next year grade and a next year school. So no matter what kid, so this 9th grader is moving to 10th, staying at the high school. You've got to make sure that's set, and then that video from last week, it will show you exactly how to do it, or you can click on these links and it will show you as well. Another recommendation, activities. So let's talk about activities inside of PowerSchool. Activities are check boxes that y'all can use to track whatever kind of data you want to track on kids. So notice I've set up some activities here to see who's in what sport, who's got registration, who's done this, that. Most things with activities are year to year. So there is a recommendation that you go in and clear your activities for certain students or for certain types of activities in PowerSchool. So if you are a district that does have activities and you do need to clear some of them, there is actually a process. I come under here to System, and I come down to right here under Data Management. See this Clear Activities? It actually lets you pick and choose. So maybe there are some activities that I don't want to clear. You know, if I don't want to clear who's in extended day, because maybe that doesn't change. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I know it typically does, but let's pretend it doesn't. Then I would say I want to clear all of these, but not these. I want to clear who completed registration forms last year and who submitted their utilities last year. I want to clear who's an athlete because I want to put in fresh ones for next year. So whichever ones you would want to clear out so that you can reset them next year, here is the process under System where you can go in and wipe everybody's field so that it will get rid of those before end of your process and doesn't carry them into the next school year, because this is a live field. So anybody you have marked or is going to stay marked unless you go in and clear this. Okay, so let's go back to this. Resolve, now this right here is required, and this is Alabama state specific. Resolve all provisional enrollments. Your end of year process will not be allowed to run if any student is in the entire district is provisionally enrolled. And guys, this reason right here is why we cannot start enrolling students for next school year if they already attend another school in the state. So if I'm sitting here at this high school and I know I've got this 11th grader who's going to be coming to me next year from a bordering school, I cannot enroll them yet getting ready for next year until the school they're at now runs through their end of year process. Because if I try to enroll them right now for next year, they're still going to be an E99 saying, hey, they're already enrolled somewhere else. And that would prevent you from running your end of year process. So you cannot do this. So you're going to have to go into your system and you're going to have to go into provisional enrollment. And anybody who is in an E status, all of these have got to be taken care of before. And if it's something that you've accidentally done for next school year and they got popped into, you know, especially for those of you who are online enrollment customers, if you've delivered some kids and you found out, oh, they were actually enrolled in another school, mama just didn't tell me, especially with some of these kindergarten students who were in a pre-K, you would need to no-show them. And then you would have to re-enroll them after the end of year process is over. So all provisional enrollments must be cleared before the end of year process. Default grade levels for FTEs, these actually roll from year to year, so you should not have to touch this step, but this is in here just in case you have a new school that you're standing up and you need to make sure the FTE is set so it knows what FTE to actually assign the student in the end of year process. So this right here is really just for districts if you are starting a new school. So are any of you building a new high school, middle school, elementary school that you're having to put in PowerSchool? You need to make sure that FTE level is set for them. Fees, if any of y'all do use fees inside of PowerSchool, the setup for them kind of remains in there. You're just going to have to make the decision. Are you going to roll those fees over into the next year, or you want to wipe them out for every kid? Complete scheduling. Okay, here's a big point of contention in this state. If you are using Power Scheduler, it is recommended that you commit that schedule to the live side before end of year. If you are not ready to, because I know there's going to be some who are not, there is a way to continue scheduling after end of year, but you're going to have to make some adjustments. In the weekly newsletter, I have stated and given the steps, and even in the end of year memo. So let me go back here and get to that end of year memo. Pull it back up. It states right here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Right here, it is important to note about Power Scheduler that you really need to have those schedules committed before June 6th and end of year starts. However, if you cannot, then you'll need to just kind of stop working on scheduling during end of year, and then after end of year is completed, you will need to follow the steps located in this article right here about how to continue scheduling after the end of year process is done. And basically what it's going to entail doing is once you run end of year, so let me go back to a student and grab a 9th grade student. Okay, here's a 9th grader. So I want you to think about this logic right here. Let's go back to the scheduling setup page. We right now have this 9th grader saying they're going to move to 10th grade next year. When you run the end of year process, it's going to update her to 9th grade, and it actually also bumps the next year to 11th grade to get them kind of in line with what should happen next year. When that happens and you're still scheduling in Power Scheduler, it messes the load process up in Power Scheduler, because in Power Scheduler, you still need her to look at her next year being 10th grade, not 11th grade. So the two pieces that you end up having to do is go back and reset everybody's next year grade back to what it was prior to you running the end of year, and the next school back to what it was prior to you running end of year. And then once you commit, you have to go reset it all back to what it should be for the upcoming year. So all of that is documented in this end of year documentation knowledge base article right here. So have conversations about scheduling. If at all you can finish and commit your schedule to the live side, then absolutely do it before end of year. If you cannot, then just know that you're going to have a little extra work to do that the other districts did not. Some scheduling notes just about years and terms and making sure you set up that calendar to go through. Nobody in here uses Power Lunch, but these steps are in here in case you need them. Again, an optional one if you want to export your historical grades table just so you have a snapshot of it, you absolutely can. Here is the other big one and how some people incorrectly interpreted this one last year. Cross-enrolled students. If you are a district that accepts cross-enrolled students, not that you have cross-enrolled students that you send, but if you are a district that accepts cross-enrolled students, so I'm really talking to the districts in here who have career tech centers and y'all allow students from other districts to come to you. You know how those districts cross-enroll the student into your career tech center? So they're sitting in there. Those districts that hold the career tech center have to withdraw those students at the end of year before the end of year process is. And an exit code is developed. It is exit cross LEA. So if you're a district that you have kids you're sending to Access, no, I'm not saying you withdraw your kids that you have in Access. That is not what this is. This is not for districts who send kids cross enrolled. This is for districts who receive the kids in a cross enrolled process. Those students do have to be transferred out because if not, they're going to show up on your end of year validation report for not having a next grade in a next school because you don't promote them. Their homeschool does. They're just coming to you for career tech or whatever class you're letting them come in for Access. They're just coming into Access. So like Access has to go through and transfer out all the kids who took Access because they're all cross enrolled into their district. Those are the steps, guys. It's data cleanup. It's transferring out certain subgroups of kids. Also keep in mind, and it's not documented here, it probably wouldn't hurt for me to go do this, so I probably will. There are 2 other kids that have to be transferred out before the end of the year. If you accept Tim Tebow students, you know, you got the homeschool athletes that come to participate in sports. Those students do not need to process in the end of year because you do not promote and graduate them either. They're taking homeschool. So any kid that you have that's a Tim Tebow kid needs to be withdrawn out at the end of the school year, marked with that exit back to church and homeschool kid. Also, if you have foreign exchange students, those students need to be exited out as well, withdrawn back to their country. Because if not, all of those kids are going to show up in your cohort and they shouldn't be. So make sure that you take care of those 2 subgroups of students as well. Couple of questions that have came in. Is there a way to show students missing? Yes, Kate, Kendall answered that, but I'm going to show you another way as well. Dina, are there instructions on how to wipe out all fees before the rollover? Actually, Dina, I'm going to show you how to do it during the rollover. It's part of the process. Sharon, one of our schools just enrolled a student from another district. The other district has a policy of no withdrawals 10 days of the last day. What do we do? Okay, you're going to need to, Sharon, no-show them. Let them process through the end of year because I'm sure that other district just want to promote them. So you want to get them pulled in with that promotion status. So you need to no-show them in the provisional enrollment right now. Just hit that no-show button. And then after I give the all clear from everyone that we finished the end of year, you'll be able to re-enroll and pull that kid back in. Shelly, is there a way to withdraw students cross LEA at one time, or do they have to be individual? I think you meant, can you do them all at one time? Yes, there you can. There is a way on the main screen to transfer out a group of kids. So if you can find all of your students, and everyone knows that they should be in with a exit code. I don't think I have any cross LEA students in here, but let's see. Yeah, I don't have any kids. If I had some cross-enrolled students, they would be listed here. So let me just grab a list of kids just to show you what you would do. Once you get their list, there is a process right here of transfer out of school, which will then allow you to say, I want to take these 460 kids and transfer them out. You pick your last day of school. So if my last day of school is 5/26, that's what you're going to do. And you should have that exit code. Let's see if I can find it in here of, there it is. exit cross LEA. Okay? And so that is what you would do. And you can do them all at one time. And Robert, so for anybody who's need to transfer out the cross LEA, the Tim Tebow, or the foreign exchange students, last day of school. That's what you want to use. Someone just asked, what about Tim Tebow students and athletic eligibility and summer workouts if not enrolled? Okay, so y'all, I talked to Marvin Cho Monday about this. It's not that they have to be enrolled in Power School. If they have filled out the withdrawal paperwork, or you have, they filled out your enrollment paperwork, that is what suffices as that, and you would just need to submit anything for eligibility manually to Dragonfly inside of that. AHSAA is very well aware that we have to do this process inside of Power School. So if you've got the paperwork justifying everything that will be put in Power School, that suffices as far as athletic eligibility. So let your coaches know that you do not put those new kids in yet until after end of year rollover. Yes, Christy was asking, in those directions, Christy, it walks you through how to do all of that in mass. All right, so I'm going to go back here because now that you've done all the prep work, so let's say you validated your data, you've checked, everything. It's time to run the end of your process. How do you do it? So let's start back at the main screen. And welcome back, everyone, for hour number 2 of our webinar. Everybody knows it's been on before. My 1 hour mark, it always drops me out for a minute because WebEx tells me that y'all need a break from me. So no, you do not withdraw 49.99 students. You leave those kids in there. Services kids, they are staying in there as long as they're receiving services. Only if the parents are coming in to stop services do you withdraw them. Roll them over. Now, I will say there are some districts who do allow students true grade level private school students to come take like a career tech class or an AP class. There's a non-traditional type for that. They're the non-public, non-funded kids. Those kids, yes, should be withdrawn, but not your pre-K kids, not your special ed services kids, not your $49.99 kids. You leave those inside of there. All right, so where is this end of year process at and who does it? First of all, only one person in the district does this process. One person presses this button, and I really hope, guys, that in your districts, y'all have locked down the security to this page, and only your sysadmin has this, because once you run it, there is not a way to undo this, okay? Where do we find the end of year run at? When you're on the main page and you want to do this, I'm going to go back to district office. You are going to come here to system, and right here is the link. Okay, this link for end of year process takes us to this page. This page should have page security, and only your sys administrator should have access to this page. At the top, it tells you exactly what this process is going to do, and even it says, AKA, this is what promotes your students. So here's something very important to know. For those of you who have to look at the cohort tile in AIM, your graduates do not show as graduates until this process has been performed. So you're not going to see your graduates update over in AIM until you run the end of your process and it moves your kids from your high school to your graduated students and gives them that G exit code. So keep that in mind. It tells you that the students who it's going to validate, have you set the school next year? Have you done everything that you need to as far as setup? And then it tells you it's going to promote, retain, or demote. It's going to transfer students. It's going to graduate them to the next level into graduating school if they're graduates. It's going to set the next exit date according to the next year. So what it does on that transfer info screen, it takes, and let's go to the transfer info screen here. It's going to take this current school year's enrollment for this year. So when school gets out and I run this, it's going to move this enrollment record down here to become the first previous enrollment record. And it's going to go ahead and trigger next year's and term date. So if you set your year and term up, make sure it's correct. because it's going to flag that as the beginning and end date for the upcoming year. So it goes ahead and sets everything to, hey, next year is ready and you're ready to go. It's going to carry forward balances. It's going to remove records of parental access. It's going to copy courses. It's going to copy like all that stuff is going to start moving over. All the stuff that stays from year to year is going to move over. It tells you before you do this button pressing here, make sure you've set your next school. Make sure the next year's been created. Verify students have been moved the right way. If you want to get a backup, here is how to create a case and request end of year backup. Run the validation ahead of time. It tells you what does it mean to be a graduating student, a promoted, a retained, a demoted. It also gives you the schools and tells you what you've set up as the default next school inside of there. Everybody's kind of set and really nothing to do there. Here's the biggest thing, and this is where we had some issues last year. This area down here has to be set. Now, I will tell you, 2 weeks ago, because of the issues we had last year, I had PowerSchool to run a script that set these for everyone. So when every district that's on this call and watches this recording goes back and looks at this page, you should see this right here, because this is how it should look in Alabama and nothing else. If you don't process correctly, it means somebody in your district has gone and touched this from what we have just set it to make it correct. Last year, a lot of people didn't have this information filled out. So kids got enrolled into next year with no enrollment code, and we're not being picked up in AIM at all. People didn't have the right exit codes on them, especially for graduated students. And so it wasn't putting kids as graduates correctly. And it was like deleting out enrollment records for kids. So this is exactly how this needs to look. Now, Dina, you asked a second ago, how do I wipe those fees if I want to? Here is where that choice is made. Fees. When you run end of year, do you want to take their balance and roll it over? Or do you want to zero it out and say, nope, everybody gets a clean slate. Nobody owes any money. I don't know many districts that do that, but in case you do, that's how it's done. Down here in this drop down, there are 3 options. There's perform validation. There's perform validation, and any student that has an issue, make them my current selection so I can then go work with them. And then there's the actually perform it and promote students. Okay. You are not going to use this 3rd option until that week of June 6th. June 6th through 13th is when you press that one. But you can, as of today, start running these top 2. So I'm going to run it. I'm going to click that perform end of year validation and press the button. Now, this is actually new right here that started this year with PowerSchool. Based on what you have set for next grade level and next school, it tells you have set 4,272 kids to promote. You have set 324 to skip a grade, so you're double promoting 300 kids. You are set to retain 103 kids. You're set to demote 3. You are set to move but not graduate 842, and you've set to graduate 323. You can use this as a checks and balances to see if you have marked everybody correctly in the retention, promotion, and graduation process, because typically districts know how many kids are going to retain across the district, especially smaller districts. I know larger districts, maybe not so much. But it can help you figure out if you had any data errors. So while this is processing, a couple of chats that have come in. Do $49.99 need to be set for next grade and next school year? Yes, they do. Every student in your district's got to be set for that, which is why we have to withdraw some out who shouldn't be, but not $49.99. They do not withdraw. You do set them. Just to clarify, we need to withdraw Tim Tebow kids on the last day of school, correct? Yes, that is correct. And then if they come back for a sport again for the next school year, you re-enroll them in, because you do not perform a graduation, or a promotion, or a retention, because you're not their educational provider. They're being homeschooled. That homeschool is determining their promotion, retention, graduation, not you. So you don't need to have a record of that in your SIS, and they don't need to come up here to the state as being that way. Lynn, how can you find those that are set to skip a grade? So Lynn, in the webinar I did last week on promoting, retaining, and graduating, I went through a report that you can pull that will show you how to check everybody's status to know who you've done. Why would we have any skip a grade if we've set it up that way? It's just all it is telling you that you've got kids that you've moved from one grade that's not a sequential grade in it. And yes, seniors are going to show that because you're moving them from grade 12 to grade 99, and we have grades 13, 14, and 15. So logic, according to PowerSchool, is that 12 should move to 13 because it's sequential, even though that's not really how it ends. We're special in Alabama because we have grades 13, 14, and 15. So you can kind of just ignore that. Those should technically be the same unless you are double promoting someone. All right, notice my process ran. This is going to tell you, somebody asked earlier, can I find a way of anybody who's missing data? Absolutely. This validation process will tell you because it will not even let you run the end of your process until you get all of those cleaned up. You have to have all errors wiped out from right here before you can run that end of your process, or your end of your process is going to fail when you try to run it. So notice it says end of your process is not completed. These errors have occurred. Now, this screen only has so much real estate. So it's going to show me these few kids. That does not mean that's all the kids that have errors. It's just all that it fit on this page. It could be that you have lots more. So you'll have to go and find. So let's look at what's errors. This student doesn't have next school year. It's blank. Yep. So I'm going to have to go find JJ, and I'm going to have to go make sure his next school year is set. This student is an E90 code. You can't have provisional. So it's going to tell you, you've got to go fix that E90 code. If you don't put a next grade level, it's going to tell you that. Notice I've got some more who are E99s. And again, some of these who have next school is blank and next school grade level is blank, it could be they are a cross enrolled student that you would not be setting in mass for those kids. So those would be transferred out. Notice down here, it tells me, hey, Stacy, you didn't even set these next two schools up for next year. So it does not see a next year years and terms for the middle school or from a graduated student school. So basically, it just stops the process and goes, nope, go try again, go fix all this data, and then try to validate again. So like I said, you can start doing all these validations now and making sure that your data is clean, because I know one district ends tomorrow. The rest of us in, I know most of y'all will call in next week and some the week after. But get everything ready so that when June 6th comes, y'all can just go, hey, let's go ahead and run this now and get this out of the way and be done with it. So you'll have to run this validation process, and not until you get all of these errors clean. And when you do, it'll say, hey, validation is ready, please proceed. What that means is you'll then come back to system, and you'll come back to the end of your process, and you'll change it from this to actually perform, and then you'll press the button. Now let's talk about timing of this button, because you really don't want anybody in PowerSchool doing anything when you run this process. So you need to make sure you communicate that with your district. Hey, we are going to run the process from this time to this time. Do not log into PowerSchool. Some districts even go in and take people's access away so they can't log into it during this process. I would also recommend doing this when you're not having heavy traffic. So do it after hours if possible. Pick one afternoon when you know everybody's gone and go, okay, hit the button. Do it on a weekend, whatever you want to do. And that's one of the reasons that we do it on a Tuesday to Tuesday, so that you do have weekend opportunity to do it. Or you just do it during a day where you tell everybody, do your normal job, but don't do anything in PowerSchool and run it. I will say, personally, the first time that it was ran for a district that I had to participate with, it literally took it about 30 minutes. That was it. And it wasn't a big deal. I think a lot of people, because there's a lot of buildup and hype to this, that it has to be done, that they expect it to be some monstrous process when they press this button. And it's really not. It's just kind of done in there. Now, let's talk about some things that must be done as far as state reporting. One of the big things when you run this end of year process, and it's denoted on the actual, let me go back to my link here. On the things that I've been sharing out on my weekly newsletter, I've got a chart or a calendar of all the dates, is this homeless. Homeless is due the third Friday in June. However, your homeless data is actually snapshot when you run the end of your process. So for all of my SIS administrators on here, you need to talk to your homeless liaison, because all kids need to have their homeless status verified. So let's just come here and go to the Alabama page real quick on this student. And on federal programs, down here's your homeless data. When students are homeless, it's marked as verified, okay? When you run the end of year process, every student who is verified gets reset to potential because districts must re-verify homeless status in the next school year. So that is why we have to snapshot homeless before end of year. We have a process built in up here, Charles does, that it knows when you snapshot and it takes, or it knows when you press that button and it takes the snapshot for your district. So make sure you do not press that button for end of year until you have talked to your homeless liaison and you have actually verified that they have all of their homeless students marked verified correctly and they're showing up correctly in AIM. Okay. So homeless is very, very important. And I note that in every training I've done, I've talked to homeless liaisons about this. I've talked to tech directors, data managers about this. So make sure y'all understand that. I would also double check AIM. Everybody needs to be looking at their official state collection errors. Make sure you're looking ahead at your 9-month report. Look at your ADA and see, is your attendance looking right? Because once you perform into your process, it's going to be hard to make any changes to attendance and fix it after the fact. So you want all of your data in PowerSchool to be right and correct before you run this end of your process. When school gets out, get your people hot and heavy looking at AIM, looking at cohort, looking at dropout, looking at CCR, looking at homeless, looking at 9-month report, look at your ADA, your ADM, look at SIR. Look at all of your numbers and make sure that what you are seeing is what you expect to see. And if it's not, fix it in PowerSchool before you run the end of your process. Okay, that's going to be huge. So that's really all there is in making sure that you can run the process, the things you need to check ahead of the process. Now, we could have a whole separate webinar on state reports and everything, and we will have one. But for end of year, that's your process beginning to end. So my big thing to you is start checking your data. Run those enrollment and section audits and run that validation and get all of that lined up and make sure your kids have your marks. Your big one on your seniors is make sure you got their CCR information in here. This is still manual. Okay, so if a kid got AP attainment, we still have to check that box for it. So have your people, whoever's designated at your district, have they been checking these? Have they marked their seniors with their graduation exit type? Because it takes two things to be a graduate. You got to get that G code in the end of your process, and you have to have this. I will tell you, I just peeked into AIM this morning and saw a lot of districts with mid-year graduates who did not do this exit type, so they've not been marked in cohort yet. So you've got AIM errors saying, hey, you graduated this student mid-year, but you didn't mark an exit type, which means they're not counting as a graduate in cohort. Make sure that's in there. Make sure for your seniors you've put the FAFSA type. If they filled out the FAFSA, you put no waiver. If the parents filled out a waiver, you put parent waiver. Anybody left over, your district needs to issue a waiver because you don't want any kid not graduating because of FAFSA. So make sure that that's handled. I will be sharing this recording out so that we can have it to refer back to, because I know y'all are going to be getting game plans together now that you know what to expect with the end of year process. So just be very, very cautious of that. And my thing is, use this guide, especially when it talks about whatever report needs to be pulled and ran. Look at these knowledge base articles, especially this one on reports. I cannot state this enough to get this report ran. Another set of validations that is also recommended in these reports, only certain people are going to have access to this, but under system and special operations, there's a set of data validation reports that can also be ran. They're just SQL scripts. This will tell you if you have any issues with anyone. So I'm going to open this one in a new tab. Now I'll tell you, don't do what Stacy did. Always make sure to put display header saying yes, or else you get a blank piece of paper and you're like, what's going on? Submit. It's going to go to the report queue. And look, and if all you see are section headers, then you're good. You don't have any errors on your CC table. If I have teachers, you want to go through and run each one of these. Again, make sure your display header says yes. Submit. Do I have any issues with teachers? Nope, no teachers. I will tell you, one that usually does get errors is this grade scale one. And it lies. Ignore this. Okay, this one right here, I don't know why, it's a weird one. I did. If you see anything that just says unknown sync error, ignore it. If you see anything that says anything else, then we're gonna have to put in PowerSchool support tickets and get that. So you do want to go to special operations, and you do want to go to your data validations report and run each one of these just to make sure they're clean. Rarely do I see people with issues with these. If you do, I'm trying to see if I can find one that does. I don't think I have any errors on any of them. It really does tell you like what's going on with it. Tell you I don't have any issues with it. So anything you need, just those are ways to just extra double checks of data before you run that end of year process. Johnny said, can you discuss the dates for summer withdrawals and enrollments for next year? So remember that because we have to run the true school year, that once we do give the green flag for everybody to start withdrawing and enrolling, you want to do them using July dates. Okay, so you don't want to put anything as a June. So let's say we all run end of year and we're all good, and I say, all right, guys, you can start doing your enrollments or your withdrawals. I know what most people do is start withdrawing all the kids out that mama's already come in and told you that they're leaving. A lot of people have already told them in their district, hey, everybody for your summer withdrawal date, you always use, July 1st or whatever. But I will say, Johnny, we're going to do a separate webinar to go through summer withdrawals for everyone when it comes that time. Pamela, is there a report that will list those that do not have graduation exit types and FAFSA types? Absolutely there is. There is an enterprise report. So if you go into enterprise reporting and your district has downloaded this report for you, it's the base cohort, CCR, and FAFSA report. We put the big three in one for you so that you could start running to see who has the data and who does not. So I'm going to look at enrolled students only. And I know what most people want to do is check their seniors first, so you can always filter and say, hey, just show me my seniors. So the original report will show you, have you marked the graduation type and exit date, and do you have a correct base cohort year on them? Anybody who's missing any, you need to get those fixed. Like right here, I can see that I've got some 11th graders and 10th graders missing base cohort. You need to get those fixed. I can flip this report to the CCR report to tell me zeros and ones. One means you've checked the box on that kid. So all these kids have been marked as a CTE completer and nothing else. So I can tell who's been marked as what. And then the last piece of information is your FAFSA report that will tell you if you have put any FAFSA waiver information. So let's go back to my seniors. Let me get my kids ascending because I think I've got them on the early kids. Yep, you would see if you had anything entered in on them right there. So that report is going to be a blessing to you to check those seniors and everything you need for them. Stephanie asked, the stuff you went over for graduating seniors, those need to be filled in before end of year, correct? Yes, ma'am. Please do all of that before end of year. I would say, Stephanie, do everything you possibly can before end of year, because the only thing we wait on for after end of year is processing your withdrawals for the upcoming school year. Bill, it's going to be, the recording will be sent via email to everyone who got the original invite. It will also be listed on my newsletter on Monday's updates, and it will also be placed on the website. If you have the link to the Alabama PowerSchool website, we have been pulling apart and putting an end of year page on there that will put all of the end of year documentation on there as well, so you can refer back to that each year. Is there a way to look for FTE from this year being used in prior years? Some of my schools have a lot, some have none, so I say I need to see if they have been fixed. Actually, yes, there is a plugin that MBA has that is free, Gary, and I can give you the link to it if you want. What it does is it sets in system reports. It gives a link for an ADA and ADM configuration audit, and this will actually tell you if you've got kids that have issues with FTE. So like right here, this kid has an incorrect FTE. So I would have to go and find what it should be and update that, and most of these can be updated in student field values. It will tell you if you have kids that have a school ID that's different than an enrollment ID. So I highly recommend, if you have not installed this MBA plugin. Now remember, this is a company that does sell plugins, but this is one that is free. Down here at the bottom, they have a whole slew of free ones. I'll put this link in chat. Highly recommend this ADA ADM audit that you can download and install. Chesley, Yeah, Chase, I answered that earlier. You do need to set $49.99 for next grade and next school year. All right, perfect, guys. I'm going to stop the recording so it can start rendering.